Hello everyone, my name's Graeme and today I'll be talking about swarming across strategies, implementing agile principles at scale. As we all know, the world is changing, and that change is not just fast, it's increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. There are lots of frameworks and methodologies out there to help teams and organisations cope with this change, but I particularly like this one. It basically says, understand the core principles you need to thrive in an increasingly complex environment and then implement them as best you can within your own organisational context. The 3 pillars of empiricism, transparency, inspection and adaptation, underpin all agile frameworks and methodologies. But as you scale up the number of teams involved, autonomy and alignment become critical as well. This is a great diagram as it highlights what you're trying to achieve, high autonomy and high alignment, and some of the alternatives. So what I'm going to do for the rest of the talk is to introduce some of the tools and techniques I've been using to implement agile principles at scale across our organisation. I'll demonstrate how these tools and techniques can simplify our understanding of the present and our notions of the future, engage the creative potential of disparate teams and transform the services they provide through continuous cycles of inspection, innovation and adaptation. Because as John Doerr points out in his book Measure What Matters, ideas are easy, execution is everything. So for me, it all starts with a process of continuous improvement. This is the improvement kata from the book Toyota Kata by Mike Rother. A kata is a simple set of actions you repeat again and again in order to learn new behaviour. It's pretty simple but very powerful, particularly when used in conjunction with the coaching kata, which again is a simple set of questions you repeat again and again to help others continuously improve. The first step is to define the challenge, which shouldn't be too difficult for our organisation because we're here to protect the UK and do cool technical stuff in the process. So for example, here are a couple of challenge statements from Google and the BBC. The second step is where it gets interesting, because in a complicated environment, you need to place most of your emphasis on the future. If you were building a new house, for example, you'd pay experts, architects, lots of money to design the house and then tell you what that house is going to look like, what it's going to be made of, when it will be built and how much it's going to cost. And by and large, you're not that bothered as to whether or not you're building on a greenfield site or a brownfield site. But in a complex environment, most of your emphasis has to be placed on understanding your current condition, because it's probably the only certainty that you can rely on, and it also provides a frame of reference to help you identify and define your next step, the next target condition, and the hypotheses you have to explore in order to make progress towards that target condition. The first tool I've been using to help us maintain a handle on this current condition is something that I call the workbook approach. The workbook approach is centred around maintaining a digital twin of the organisation. The UK National Infrastructure Commission defines a digital twin as a virtual representation of a physical object or system using real-time data to enable understanding, learning and reasoning. So a digital twin of our organisation can be used to represent and track the basic building blocks we have at our disposal. The teams we have, the capabilities they maintain, the new features being developed, the operations we run, the risks we're carrying, people's roles and responsibilities, and the strategies we're working towards. The workbook approach can also enable structured transparency across the organisation through regular progress updates at different levels of abstraction. This is similar in principle to the way the teleservices network and the process of regular Monday notes were used by NASA during the Apollo missions to connect disparate teams in real time and maintain a shared understanding of goals and progress. However you maintain information about the building blocks you have across your organisation, it's critical that you understand how those building blocks interact with each other over time. This is where the process of value stream mapping comes into play. Value streams can represent how people, process, tradecraft, technology and information flow interact with each other dynamically to respond to customer requests and provide value in response to those requests. It's value streams that I'll be diving into next. Before you create a value stream map, one of the most important things you have to do is to decide how you're going to scope the value stream. In my experience, the more end-to-end you can make it, the better. You can apply the value stream mapping process to smaller groups of teams if you like, and if you do so, you'll never be wrong. It's just that you could be more right as you get closer to the edges of your organisation, or even cross over into other organisations. Increasing the scope of a value stream map enables you to challenge people's worldviews, especially of teams who believe the entire organisation revolves around them, and include more people into the conversations, enabling you to maintain a more robust shared understanding of how the value stream works and what value it provides. The downside of expanding the scope, however, is that you're more likely to butt up against existing organisational structures, cultures and empires, but just because it's hard doesn't mean it's wrong. So having decided on the scope of the value stream, you can then start to map it. It all starts with identifying the customers of the value stream. You can then identify different types of requests they make of the value stream, and then you can identify all the main processes that the work needs to go through to respond to those requests. You can then identify the value that is delivered back to the customer based on those original requests. Having defined this initial framework, you can then start to elaborate each process of the value stream by identifying the teams, tradecraft, technology and information flow involved. So for example, in order to get work from the start of the first process to the beginning of the next process, Team A and Team B have to use this manual tradecraft to interact with these systems. The first system then automatically interacts with these systems, starting a flow of information through the value stream. Team Alpha then uses this tradecraft to interact with these systems to get work from the beginning of the second process to the beginning of the third process. You then repeat these steps until you reach the end of the value stream. The aim of any value stream is to maximise sustainable flow of value. So once it's been mapped, you can then analyse the value stream based on three things: the value the customer gets out of the value stream, the flow of value through the value stream, and the sustainability of the value stream. You can then identify the main constraints within these contexts, which should provide options for the next target condition. For example, say the product manager wants to improve the flow of value through their value stream. Analysing our value stream map, we identify that this manual interaction is the main constraint, so we come up with ideas, hypotheses, of ways to address it. Once a solution has been implemented, we measure the impact of the change to the flow of value through the entire value stream. If it hasn't improved the end-to-end flow of value, we've learnt something new and we can use this learning to influence the next hypotheses we try. If the flow of value has improved in a measurable way, we can then move on to the next constraint and repeat the process. In this way, a value stream can be continually improved and adapted by modifying any aspect of the value stream, including the people, process, tradecraft, technology, and information flow. So using workbooks and value streams, we can represent the current condition, the building blocks of any organisation of any size and the value streams that cut across it. We can then identify the main constraints within those value streams in the context of improving value, flow or sustainability, and address them by specifying the next target condition and exploring hypotheses that we think will enable us to make progress towards that next target condition. Defining the next target condition and exploring hypotheses is what I'll talk about next. The tool that I've been using to define the next target condition are objectives and key results, or OKRs for short. OKRs enable you to focus, align and track the work of multiple teams, as well as encouraging those teams to stretch themselves through innovation. OKRs encourages a shared understanding of what's important, the objective, and how progress will be measured, the key results. Impact mapping, on the other hand, allows you to structure and systematically explore a potential solution space around a specific goal. A potential solution space is simply all of the hypotheses you have on how to achieve your goal based on what you know today. It also encourages a shared understanding of the potential solution space and how progress will be measured, not just towards the goal, but also of your journey through the solution space. So, if the anatomy of an OKR looks like this, where you have an objective that inspires and sets direction, key results that measures progress towards that objective, and initiatives that drive progress on the key results. And the anatomy of an impact map looks like this, where you have the goal you want to achieve and the potential solution space you could explore. Then all we're doing is using impact mapping to create two levels of OKRs. The first level is centred around the goal you want to achieve, the next target condition, and the high-level hypotheses you could explore. The second level of OKRs then allows you to focus on individual hypotheses and explore the potential solution space around them. To demonstrate, I'll go through an example based on the book Measure What Matters by John Doerr. In this example, the product manager has identified that our next target condition is to win the Indy 500. So first of all, we can place our goal onto our impact map. But before we go any further, it's worth thinking about the nature of the OKR because there are two different types, committed OKRs and aspirational OKRs. For committed OKRs, you should be reasonably confident that you can achieve the goal before you start, assuming you can get the resources and priorities you need. Also, by definition, if you complete all of the key results, the objective itself will have been achieved. For aspirational OKRs, on the other hand, there is no way of knowing how you will achieve the objective before you start the work, and you don't necessarily have to complete all of your key results in order to achieve the objective. The Cynefin framework is a very useful tool that can help you understand the nature of the environment you're working in and how to make decisions within that environment. For me, committed OKRs are more aligned to the complicated domain of Cynefin. Analysts can analyse and plan their way through a problem if they're given the right resources. Aspirational OKRs, however, are more aligned to the complex domain, where experts have to learn their way through a problem using experiments and feedback. Both types of problem space involve very different mindsets, skill sets and delivery approaches, so bearing this in mind as you move towards your next target condition is very useful. For the sake of argument, let's assume that we've decided that winning the Indy 500 is an aspirational objective. We're not sure how we're going to win it, and there's lots of uncertainty and novelty that we'll have to explore, but that's the goal that we've been set. In such an environment, making the most of all the experience and expertise you have available is critical, so we're aiming to maintain a conversation that brings people together and encourages them to innovate, communicate and support one another. So the conversation you're after could go something like this. The product manager gathers everybody around and says, "Okay teams, we need to win the Indy 500. How are we going to do it?" And everyone scratches their heads for a minute, and then one of the engineers puts their hand up and says, "Well, we could make the car go faster." "Brilliant," says the product manager. "Fantastic. Why didn't I think of that?" But before the product manager can say anything else, the Agile coach sidles up to the engineer and says, "That is a great idea. What's the current condition? What are you going to measure? How are you going to measure it? And what do you think you can achieve?" And the engineer thinks for a bit and eventually she says, "Well, the average lap speed for the Indy 500 last year was 175 miles per hour. We'll obviously have to measure lap speed, which we can do with a stopwatch. Bob is good with a stopwatch, so he can do the timing, and I reckon we might be able to increase the average lap speed by about 2%. "Thank you," says the Agile coach. "Brilliant," says the product manager. "Anyone else got any ideas?" Everyone scratches their head again, and then another engineer, a designer this time, puts their hand up and says, "Well, obviously we'd like to improve the aerodynamics of the car, but we haven't been able to get enough time in the wind tunnel. If we could get into the wind tunnel a few more times, we'll definitely be able to improve the aerodynamics of the car." "Brilliant," says the product manager. "Fantastic." But before the product manager can say anything else, the Agile coach sidles up to the engineer and says, "That is a great idea. What's the current condition? What are you going to measure? How are you going to measure it? And what do you think you can achieve?" And the engineer thinks for a bit and eventually says, "Well, over the last 3 months we haven't been able to get into the wind tunnel at all. We should probably count how many times we get in, which we can do with a simple spreadsheet. And I reckon over the next 3 months we should be able to get into the wind tunnel 10 times. "Thank you," says the Agile coach. "Brilliant," says the product manager. "Anyone else got any ideas?" At this point there's a very loud coughing noise and everyone turns around to look at the pit stop crew. One of them puts their hand up tentatively and says, "All right, I suppose we could make our pit stops a little quicker." "Brilliant," says the product manager. "Fantastic." But before the product manager can say anything else, the Agile coach sidles up to the pit stop crew and says, "That is a great idea. Thank you so much for your courage and your candour. What's the current condition? What are you going to measure? How are you going to measure it? And what do you think you can achieve?" And the pit stop crew thinks for a bit and eventually say, "Well, the average pit stop time for the Indy 500 last year was between 12 and 16 seconds. We'll need a stopwatch to measure our pit stop times, but Bob is good with a stopwatch, so he can help us. And we reckon that if we put all our minds to it, we'll be able to reduce our average pit stop time by 1 second. "Thank you," says the Agile coach. "Brilliant," says the product manager. "Anyone else got any ideas?" And so the conversation continues. At every opportunity, all the teams are encouraged to contribute their ideas, share understanding, challenge preconceptions, test assumptions, think innovatively, and support each other wherever possible. Through this process, a picture of the potential solution space emerges and candidate key results are identified. When creating OKRs, John Doerr, in his book Measure What Matters, also suggests pairing key results. This is to encourage people to not only focus on the goal, but also be mindful of the unintended consequences of focusing on the goal. To highlight this, John Doerr cites the example of the Ford Pinto. In 1971, after bleeding market share to more fuel-efficient models from Japan and Germany, Ford countered with the Pinto, a budget-priced subcompact. To meet the CEO's aggressive demands, product managers skipped over safety checks in planning and development. For example, the new model's gas tank was placed 6 inches in front of a flimsy rear bumper. Needless to say, the consequences were tragic. Hundreds died after Pintos were rear-ended and thousands more were severely injured. In 1978, Ford paid the price with the largest recall in automotive history. So I'd suggest we probably need one more key result to guard against a similar unintended consequence. This key result could be focused on the standards agency that could stop us achieving our goal and the impact we need to have on them to demonstrate that we're maintaining safety standards. These conversations can enable servant leaders at all levels to nurture an environment where autonomy, alignment, innovation and learning can thrive across organisational boundaries. All of the principles listed here and many more are critical for those conversations to succeed, but the application of each of those principles depends upon many factors, including the individuals and teams involved and the culture of the wider organisation itself. Agile coaching, systems thinking, cognitive biases, nudges and negotiation skills can all be used to frame and facilitate these conversations, which should ultimately empower disparate teams to make their own decisions based on a shared understanding of the current condition and a shared commitment to achieve the next target condition. At this point, you should have a set of candidate hypotheses that starts to illuminate the potential solution space around your next target condition. Using the Cynefin framework will again help you to understand the nature of these hypotheses and therefore the delivery approaches you should take to address them. For example, these hypotheses are more complicated than complex. Experts should be able to analyse their way to a solution rather than learning their way to a solution. Booking a wind tunnel involves lots of moving parts and requires the right people to be at the right place at the right time with the right equipment. But through proper planning, this should be achievable without the need for experimentation. These hypotheses, on the other hand, might involve a lot more uncertainty and novelty, requiring experts to design experiments that can be tested quickly. The results of the experiments will then inform the next hypotheses, enabling you to identify and respond to weak signals of risk and opportunity that only become apparent as you learn. Whatever delivery approach you choose to use, however, each of these top-level hypotheses represents a different area of the potential solution space. Exploring these areas can then become the focus for the next level of OKRs. To do this, you go through a similar process as before. Maintain a conversation that brings people together to focus on the objective and use divergent thinking to identify all the things that you could do and need to do in order to achieve the objective. In this particular case, to make the car and the driver go faster. For example, The materials scientist could suggest creating a new tyre compound that could increase tyre performance by 5%. The manufacturing engineers could suggest redesigning the engine to increase engine performance by 10%. Or the team responsible for driver interaction could suggest the development of a new head-up display that could reduce driver reaction time by 1%. Any or all of these ideas could work and may make the car and driver go faster, but in a complex environment there's no way of knowing until you try. The trick is to test these ideas as quickly and as cheaply as possible and learn your way to a solution. This process allows you to flesh out the rest of the potential solution space based on what you know today. Each deliverable represents a concrete action or experiment that can be worked on by one or more teams and that should deliver some impact and/or learning. Most importantly, all the teams should now have a better shared understanding of where they are in the solution space, how they can support other teams, and what they need to do to start to make progress towards the goal. Once again, some areas of the solution space will involve high levels of uncertainty and novelty, requiring lots of experimentation and learning. Other areas, such as booking slots at the wind tunnel for example, will require a different approach based on analysis and scheduling. The Cynefin framework can help you understand the characteristics of each area and help you choose the right delivery approach for the right problem. So that's how you can create and maintain a shared understanding of the potential solution space around the next target condition. The aim is then to explore this solution space as quickly as possible. Every deliverable should either have some measurable impact or expose learning, and in an increasingly complex environment, both are equally valuable. The quicker you can explore the solution space, the quicker you'll learn, adapt, and evolve. So we now have the tools to help us understand the current condition, articulate the next target condition, and systematically explore the uncertainty in front of us based on what we know today. These tools can help us continually improve and evolve the large-scale services we provide to customers in an increasingly complex environment. However, a potential criticism of this approach is that it only supports evolution and it doesn't support transformation. You'll only ever make the horse go faster rather than turning the horse into a jet ski or spaceship, depending upon what you need. In my view, I believe this approach can support both evolution and transformation of existing value streams, for as long as those value streams underpin your organisation's mission. If you're fundamentally looking to change your organisation's mission or fundamentally change how you carry out your mission, then of course you'll need something like Lean Startup to help you identify and test completely new lines of business. But if your mission is clear and the need for your large-scale services is stable, then I'd argue the process of continuous improvement is the only way you can keep evolving and adapting the implementation of your existing value streams to keep pace with today's changing environment. To understand how the process of continuous improvement can be used to incrementally evolve a value stream, we must first understand the differences between single-loop learning and double-loop learning. Single-loop learning uses a predefined mental model and decision-making rules, or paradigms, to adapt to the environment through feedback. Double-loop learning, on the other hand, entails the modification of these paradigms based on the same feedback. For example, suppose you had customers who wanted to get from A to B and you provided a service to transport them from A to B using horses. If you only ever applied single-loop learning, you would always provide the service using horses. You may try to incrementally improve the service by using horses with longer legs or larger lung capacities and so on, but you'd always be basing your decisions on the paradigm that horses must be used. If, however, you used double-loop learning, you would question the preconceived paradigms by asking questions such as, why can't my horse have a jetpack? And eventually, why do I need a horse at all? Challenging the current paradigms of an organisation as often as possible enables self-disruption and encourages innovation. Repeated iterations of inspection, innovation and adaptation will eventually lead to transformation, not just of an organisation's value streams, but of the culture of the organisation itself. To demonstrate how a value stream can be transformed over time, consider the making bread value stream. This value stream has been around for about 11,000 years, and unless Maslow's hierarchy of needs fundamentally changes, it should be around for many years to come. In the beginning, the value stream was very simple. A single farmer was probably responsible for every process, and the customers were probably the farmer's family and local tribe. Simple tools were used to plough the field, sow the seeds, grow and harvest the wheat, grind the flour, mix the dough, bake the bread, and transport the bread to the hungry customers. It took a long time and was very hard work. But over time, thanks to double loop learning and continuous improvement, new innovations started to emerge. Someone invented a plough to replace the stick and started using horses and carts to transport the goods as they flowed through the value stream. Roles diversified over time, and these new roles started to innovate as well, introducing watermills and windmills. Crop rotation was introduced in the 16th century. Until nowadays, bread production is a multi-billion-dollar industry which is increasingly automated and integrated. Compared to its humble origins, the making bread value stream has transformed out of all recognition. Satellites help to sow seeds with millimetre precision, combine harvesters the size of woolly mammoths are used to harvest the wheat, and interconnected computers control nearly every stage of the process. So as long as the underlying need for a service remains strong, continuous improvement using double loop learning can lead to transformation. The last part of the continuous improvement process relates to the future. As I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, in an increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous environment, most of your emphasis needs to be put on the current condition, but that doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't at least consider what the future might hold. The faster you're able to iterate around steps 2, 3 and 4, the quicker you'll be able to learn and adapt to a changing environment. But what might happen after many iterations based on what you know today? This is where a tool like the 3 Horizons comes in useful. The 3 Horizons framework can help encourage conversations about the future which are more nuanced than simple, one-dimensional roadmaps. Horizon 1, the red line, represents the technology, tradecraft or value streams that are the prevalent pattern of today. They keep the lights on and pay the bills. However, there's an implicit assumption that these technologies, tradecraft or value streams, will atrophy over time, becoming less suited to the environment within which they operate. Horizon 3, the green line, represents the technology, tradecraft or value streams that are present today but that represent the prevalent patterns of tomorrow. Horizon 2, the blue line, represents disruptive innovations that can be harnessed in one of two ways. They can either be used to prolong the life of Horizon 1 technology, tradecraft or value streams, or they can be used to enable and encourage Horizon 3 technology, tradecraft or value streams. As an example, let's return to our making bread value stream and the conversation that could play out as you discuss its long-term future. The current value stream is in Horizon 1. It's the way that we make bread today, and it's been pretty good at keeping up with a growing population until relatively recently. However, as the global population continues to rise, it's struggled to keep pace with demand, and several new innovations are currently being worked on to prolong its life. Each of these innovations are focused on the front of the value stream, where Mother Nature does most of the work to grow increasing quantities of wheat in increasingly hazardous and fragile environmental conditions. The hope is that as the population increases, each innovation will maintain the value stream's ability to meet global demand. However, at some point the current value stream may start to buckle, and no new innovation will be able to stabilise the value stream in its current form. At that point, you'll need to turn to Horizon 3 technologies for potential solutions. As with many things in life, Star Trek has the answer, and you could envisage some kind of food replicator technology saving the day. But according to the 3 Horizon framework, some aspect of this future must be present today. Luckily, there are already companies out there who are experimenting with technology which may one day evolve into the food replicators of the future. The company behind this particular headline have moved away from pizzas and are now focusing on using nanotube technology to capture molecules from the air to create fuel. But one day, the same technology might enable us to print our own food by building it one molecule at a time. So the future might be here already, we just have to know how to recognise it. So in summary then, continuous improvement can help organisations thrive in increasingly complex environments, powered and guided by the simple steps of the improvement kata and the coaching kata. Having a clear understanding of the challenges you're facing is critical, and this must be used as your guiding star throughout your journey. Tools such as the workbooks and value streams can help maintain an accurate picture of the current condition, both of your organisational building blocks and the end-to-end services they support. These end-to-end services in turn help identify the main constraints, which provides a focus for your next condition and a frame of reference for your learning. OKRs can then help to define the next target condition, and impact maps can help you explore the potential solution space around that next target condition and help you learn your way towards it. The Cynefin model can help you select the right delivery approach for the right problem, and the 3 Horizon framework can help you maintain a shared understanding of what the future could hold based on what you know today. When implemented within your own organisational context, these tools can help you implement the core Agile principles at scale, and as David Marquet says, axe your way to new thinking. Thanks for listening, and I'll leave you with some of the books that I found most useful on my journey so far. If you have any further questions, comments or feedback, please get in touch.